I've been asked 1,000 times, what's the definition of innovation? True innovation is looking at a problem with a different filter and seeing a unique opportunity. Solving the problem through some means that no one had thought of before. Learning to compute using silicon when you've been using vacuum tubes. Something that people think is crazy. That's what's exciting. And how you make that happen is truly the challenge. Over the last 100 years, the human race has made extraordinary progress. The human lifespan has more than doubled. The income for every nation on this planet has more than tripled. The cost of food has come down 13-fold, energy 20-fold. What's made this possible isn't just random chance. It has been the impact of technology. And guess what? Technology isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The rate at which the technology is getting faster is itself getting faster. And riding on this exponential growth are a set of extraordinarily powerful technologies.
Ultimately, everything we care about, energy, the environment, health, disease, poverty, all of these areas are going to be transformed by this exponential growth of information technology.
In the next few decades, next 20 or 30 years, we truly have the ability to transform the human race into something far beyond our conceptions of what is possible. This is the reason I wanted to create an institution.
We are announcing here at TED, Singularity University,
to create a place that empowered people with the most powerful technologies in the world and gave them a holistic view of how they could use these technologies to impact the world. We are living in the most extraordinary time ever in human history. You have the ability as individuals and as small teams to literally do what only governments and large corporations could have done in decades past. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. And the next 10 weeks are a chance for you to really find that passion in your heart and soul, and then let no one tell you you can't do it. Ultimately, SU is a huge social experiment. It's very rare you start new universities, and to start one like this, would it work? What happens when you put the most brilliant people in the world together with the most powerful technologies? Hopefully, something amazing. We're off and running.
My name is Andreas Rautopoulos. I'm from Greece.
I'm Paula Santana, and I'm from Dominican Republic.
My name is Sam, and I'm from Canada. I'm an engineer and entrepreneur.
My name is Jessica Scorpio. I'm Canadian. Before coming to SU, I worked for the Prime Minister of Canada.
My name is Aaron Kemmer. I'm from Clearwater, Florida, and I've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years now. My mom swears that I had the largest Kool-Aid stand in all of Florida.
So you got to meet everyone for the first time. What are your first impressions of all the students?
Brilliant. Yeah.
When people ask me why I did aerospace engineering, it's a little bit of a joke, but there's somewhat serious that part of it was to be able to call myself a rocket scientist. So now I'm a rocket scientist. I get to say that.
I wanted to come to SU because I've always been really interested in the intersection between science and technology on the one hand and society and ethics on the other.
I was actually bored out of my mind in the Netherlands with what I did, and I thought I can do more and I can do better, and I wanted to find a community where people are positive and where people are at the forefront of all the technologies and all that is happening in the world and are out there.
And so SU is that kind of place?
Yes, and SU is that kind of place.
How many folks here came to this program with the intention to either start a company or be part of a new startup? If you could raise your hand.
And he challenged us at the very beginning
to take the summer to try to find our purpose. And what can we do for the world?
Grand Challenge Week is a week devoted to understanding what the grand challenges facing humanity are.
Grab a seat, let's get going. We have an exciting afternoon.
Grand challenges being water, education, poverty,
energy,
food,
security,
space,
environment, what else is there? Health,
and waste.
These are the biggest challenges we as humans face, and we hope that our students' innovations can help address these challenges. The team project it's kind of the culmination of the entire summer. You create a project that leverages advancing technologies to solve a big problem that impacts positively 1 billion people's lives within 10 years.
Like a big, big, big problem. 1 billion people plus problem.
And today, the world's biggest problems, the things that make billions of people suffer, are also the world's biggest market opportunities. We set out such a grand goal, such a big expectation. Are they going to touch the lives of even one person, let alone 1 billion people?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a small amount of pressure.
Solve hunger, healthcare, education, water, energy. We're measuring our progress by the impact of these companies. If they all fail and SU is nothing more than just a small educational program, then we missed our mark. I'm an optimist. I believe we're going to get there, but there are no guarantees.
Of all the different areas, I was attracted to waste. And one of the reasons why is because waste is not sexy. It's not cool. You know, it's something that people don't want to deal with. They don't want to think about. It's a lot sexier to design the new iPhone than it is to try to come up with a way of disposing of it. For instance, in 1995, the average life of a computer is 5 years. 2000, it shrinks down to 2 to 4 years. And nowadays, the average life of a new electronic good is between 1 to 2 years. The dark side to this, the dark side of Moore's Law, is the waste stream that this generates. Electronic waste is a huge issue, a huge humanitarian issue, a huge environmental issue, and a huge social issue. At present, in the United States, we collect less than 20% of electronic waste that gets generated by consumers. In 2009, there were 15.7 tons of copper produced from all the mines in the world. That same year, we threw away 6 million tons of copper in electronic waste. Of the 20% that is collected, it's estimated that up to 80% gets shipped abroad to developing countries where it undergoes informal recycling. Informal recycling takes place in places like Guiyu, China. And there you have elderly people and children trying to leach out gold using cyanide or to try to smelt the copper using open burning. As a result, Guiyu, China has the highest level of dioxins ever recorded. And according to the United Nations, it's the second most polluted site in the world, the first most polluted site being an abandoned nuclear reactor in Russia. The idea behind Biomine is to try to transform this waste into a resource. To put it in perspective, if we look at commercial grade gold ore, it will contain anywhere between 2 to 4 grams of gold per ton. By contrast, a ton of old cell phones will contain anywhere between 400 to 600 grams of gold per ton. So you literally have 2 orders of magnitude more gold contained within cell phones, and the same is true for copper, palladium, as well as silver. So the goal of our company is to transform the waste of today into a valuable resource for tomorrow.
And remember, if you drop one of the bolts, it's lost in space, right? In this case, it'll go to the bottom of the pool, but okay, and then it's done. Okay?
How could that be hard underwater?
Upside down, with gloves on, tethered.
My name is Dan Barry. I build robots.
I'm Neil Jacobstein. I'm co-chair of AI and robotics at Singularity University. People often think AI is a future technology, but actually it's been delivering value for 25 or 30 years. It's embedded in our traffic control systems on the ground and in the air. It's in video games all over the world. It's in decision-making systems for credit card companies. It really is ubiquitous and has already delivered billions of dollars of value.
There's a couple places that robotics will ultimately be. You will grow up with your AI. You will have conversations and tell stories back and forth. If you have some cognitive deficits, here's a creature, a companion, who will listen to the same story every day and laugh in all the right places.
AI is going to be moving its arms, its legs, seeing things through robots in everyday communication with humans.
The upside of that is no more loneliness. The downside of that is maybe people want to hang around with their AI more than with other people.
IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in a famous game of chess. That was one of the high water marks in AI, but then people said, well, chess is a very systematic game. It's nothing like a game like Jeopardy, for example.
Same category, 1200. Answer, daily double.
IBM's Watson didn't just beat, but trounced the two world champions in Jeopardy.
Who is Bram Stoker and the wager? Hello, 17,973, 41,413, and a two-day total of 77,140.
I think that we'll see that AIs will develop really remarkable intelligence that exceeds human intelligence in many different dimensions. We'll see AIs develop types of intelligence that human beings don't have, and we will be them in many respects.
Some of your friends may ask you, what are you worrying about all these new technologies for? Don't we already have enough technology? And the answer to that is a simple no.
I felt the pressure to do something great.
You said you wanted to change the world. You said you were interested in technology. With what you have today, what can you come up with? And give me your best shot. Matternet is addressing the poverty grand challenge.
1 billion people are disconnected because they have no access to all-season roads. That means that they cannot send goods to market, they cannot receive goods, they cannot receive medical supplies. It's almost impossible for them to find this path out of poverty.
So it's not about building more roads. It's not about more subways. It's not about more bridges, really. It's about how we're thinking, how this infrastructure is growing.
We are building a network. We call it Matternet, a network for transportation of matter, using unmanned aerial vehicles. These vehicles fly autonomously. They just use GPS coordinates to fly between trusted locations where they exchange payloads and batteries in order to fly further. If you have a system that allows you to transport things aerially, you do away with the need to build roads, which is a huge expense.
Can we jump those stages of building roads, millions of kilometers of roads that cost millions and billions of dollars? We can create these ultra-flexible networks that connect people without having to build something that will cost a lot and remain there forever.
I'm going to be starting over the course of summer to share with you lessons I've learned in pulling off what other people call impossible. I was born in the 1960s and during Apollo became absolutely passionate about spaceflight. It was my mission in life. I ended up becoming a doctor to make my mom happy, if for nothing else. But all along, my passion was space. And over the years, I've started over a dozen companies in the space arena. One of my companies, Zero Gravity Corporation, has taken 12,000 people into weightlessness. We flew Stephen Hawking into zero-G.
Around here! Hey!
You know, ultimately, though, doing any of these big, bold adventures takes three things: technology, money, and people. And technology is marching along, it's driving, it's exponentially growing. There is plenty of money around the world. But getting access to the right people is always the hardest thing. All my life, I have loved pulling together communities of people who share a common ethos to do great things. And SU for me was my next step. It was, creating the place that I would want to live my life with, the community that I would want to be with a mindset that says anything is possible. It's a big, bold idea, but ultimately, that's the place I want to be living. That's the place I want to be spending my time. And this was my shot.
And if it doesn't work?
And if it doesn't work, I would be very upset. I'd be, if it doesn't.
Did some breast swimming.
Okay.
Partnership with the.
So what I want to do is create. I think I could create a podcast where every.
There you go. Like a football. Wow. Oh.
Today we say there's an app for that. Tomorrow we're going to say there's an org for that. There's an organism that will fix anything you can imagine out in this world. It's just one of the new tool sets that we have, and it's one of the most powerful we will ever have.
Synthetic biology is probably the most powerful technology on the planet today.
We're going to essentially march up the evolutionary tree, creating a new one. Synthetic biology is effectively a new form of genetic engineering. It's being able to print DNA.
It's going to change our energy business, our food business, every part of our existence.
Before, to write genetic code, you needed a PhD. The thing that's really changing the entire game is being able to print out genetic code with a very simple device. So now it's no longer so much about how you're going to make this code, and more about what do you want to make with it. Really, since life began, living things have been constrained by Darwinian evolution, survival of the fittest. Now we're able to create entirely new organisms that nature would never have selected for, producing something that has some value to society. You end up being able to start to think about programming everything that's living on this planet.
I think humanity will change totally in the future because of these capabilities. We have a chance to physically change our own bodies.
We don't have to stay constrained by the species barrier that is human anymore. We can start to incorporate elements from other creatures. Do we want to delete out things that we know can cause disease later in life? Do we want to live longer? We've never had a choice in this before. We have nothing in our history to guide us moving to our future. We're going to have to figure this out the hard way by doing it. We've literally trained tens of thousands of students how to do this technology, starting using computer software.
But you understand the point of what we're doing? Okay, go forth and biologize.
And so they're exploring in the same way that 30 years ago, students were exploring how to program a personal computer.
It's not going to glow. Nature hasn't been awesome enough to create this bacteria that glows on its own. So we're going to help it along.
It's an exponential technology. We're going to get better at writing genomes very, very quickly. It's not just reading the book of life, it's actually starting to write new books.
You know, coming into SU, I thought I really understood a lot of these advancing technologies, and I think I was pretty wrong. I learned about a lot during those first couple weeks, things that I hadn't heard before. The technology that really struck out to me was 3D printing.
Three-dimensional printing is a way to create a part directly from a computer file. You create your computer model, you send it to the printer, and the printer essentially grows the part. It's additive. That's the main difference, is that you're assembling molecules either by layer or by dust particle or by liquid that's being sintered or liquid being deposited. You do it enough times and you get a pretty good facsimile of what you originally intended.
3D printing is the next industrial revolution. I mean, it's that simple.
Since you don't have steel tools cut in China and parts that have to be injection molded, you can actually just create your digital file, create your part, and put it on the open market. You can have that part in hand immediately. So if you are, for example, Formula One, they don't have time to tool up all their parts and to debug them and to get them prepped. And so they simply print it, they have it on the car, they test it, and it gives them a very fast iteration cycle.
One of the holy grails is possibly to replace organs with generated organs, essentially 3D printed organs. There's many patients who die every year, thousands, from organ shortages. And a 3D printer will essentially print cells, using cells instead of ink, to create that key building block of an organ, the blood vessels.
I had no idea what is happening in this world. I mean, you come here and you're like, wow, 3D printing and DNA and, you know, you've got robots and all this stuff. And you're like, I had no idea. It was all so cool.
I came to Singularity University with the specific interest of starting a space company. That's when I met, my co-founder, Jason Dunn, who also had the same interest, and I really think that's why we hit it off so well, and why we were able to, create something, is because we both had that passion to create something that would affect the space industry.
A lot of people say that the reasons the dinosaurs are extinct is because they didn't have a space program.
There's absolutely a survival aspect. We have more and more ways to blow ourselves up and kill ourselves. The more that we're limited to, Earth, the less likely we have a chance of even surviving as a species.
If we can colonize other worlds, build colonies in space, we're basically just backing up, building redundancy, making sure that our species stays around.
I think that by nature we want to explore everything that there is to explore. Those things that just make us curious. And space is that next frontier.
The team project is called Made in Space. The idea is that we bring 3D printers to space and we bring manufacturing to space with it.
So there's many reasons why you'd want to build in space. One of the reasons is independence from Earth. Imagine if everything that you need today you had to go get from London or Australia. That's very similar to how it applies to space. So emergencies happen. A big one is Apollo 13, where they had to put a round filter into a square hole to make sure the astronauts got enough oxygen and not too much carbon dioxide. And they had to mock together a real big solution.
If astronauts had 3D printers on the space station, then they would be more Earth independent. If a tool breaks, they can fix the tool. If a part doesn't exist that they need, they can build the part. They don't have to rely on Earth so much, which means that their missions become less risky. The challenge itself it's daunting. I think that's the easiest way to say it. It's daunting, but at the same time, it's really, really exciting. The idea that what you're doing has the potential to impact 1 billion people positively, once you decide to do that, and once you wrap your head around that you can live that life, solving big problems like that, it's hard to turn back.
Do we want students to create a team project that in the beginning is real and does something? Or do we want people to create a team project that has the potential to touch lives of 1 billion people? And the answer is we want both. And so we're looking for a car sharing program on year one that touches 1,000 people is great, but if it leads to autonomous cars 10 years from now that's touching 1 billion people.
I think fundamentally our team projects are not churning out or not working in the way that we would like to see them.
I agree that the 10 to the 9th plus projects has had mediocre results. I still personally, my drive is to spawn those companies.
This organization has had a really nice run of publicity.
You could on the block.
And you guys, we guys, are teetering on the edge going from new kid on the block to new kid stumble.
We need your help. Ultimately, we need your commitment to giving your all to get these team projects to the state of where they can be, because we depend upon their success to help us move SU forward in the eyes of the donors, the benefactors, the faculty, and all, to do it next year again. And that if not you, who? If not now, when? That you have the tools to really fundamentally make a difference in these key areas.
Okay, things that fail. Everything, my gosh. It's funny, you know, I try not to think about failure that much. It's a peculiar quirk I have, so I have to force myself to think, okay, where was there a failure? Oh yeah, it's the majority of what we do.
Probably the biggest single thing that's good about Silicon Valley is its love for failure. Here, if you haven't failed, if you only had successes, people will look at you skeptically and like, oh, that means you never done anything interesting. It means you only did something that, you know, anybody could do, right? You never took risks.
And it's the notion of fail often, fail early. It's the idea that if you don't try stuff, you become very risk adverse. The more you've invested in something, the less you're willing to let it go, because my God, I've spent so much time and I've spent so much money. How can I possibly stop? I'll fail.
If you want to make something work, you have to follow the scientific method, and that requires failure. It's part of the process.
Edison, in fact, had advisors who said that after 1,000, 2,000 filaments that didn't work, this light bulb project really should be abandoned. It wasn't working, just like we told you it wouldn't work. But he felt, no, he had actually succeeded in finding out that these 2,000 filaments didn't work.
And I've had also a lot of failures. I want to be very clear about this. I've had the companies I'm not telling you about.
Science is very frustrating. For every one breakthrough, there are 10,000 broken dreams.
Seriously, launch vehicles, satellite communications, telecom companies, plenty of companies where I've lost millions of dollars and years of time. But I learned something.
Aliens didn't give us this technology. It's a byproduct of hard work, of dead ends, of frustration.
Well, that didn't work too well.
But after the frustrations are cleared out, we see the clear road to the future, and we say to yourselves, I helped to create this future.
My name is Mark Goodman. I'm Chair of Policy, Law, and Ethics at Singularity University. I work to understand the security implications of emerging technologies. For every bit of technology that get introduced, there's potential upsides and there's potential downsides.
We're seeing more and more robots that are being armed. There are 12,000 ground-based systems, robotic systems in Iraq and Afghanistan that have got guns. Who thinks it's a good idea to give a robot a gun?
I'm quite concerned about the idea of putting weapons on autonomous vehicles and then providing those vehicles with the authority to decide when and whom to shoot. How we keep that under control and how we manage that is an open question right now.
Synthetic biology has the opportunity to be highly disruptive. It can create abundant fuels. We can have biofuels such that we're no longer required to rely upon petroleum. What's interesting about synthetic biology is that since 2008, SynBio has been proceeding at a pace 3 to 5 to 10 times Moore's Law, which means that the rapid development in synthetic biology as an avocation and as a profession may not take 30 years as it did with the personal computer, but it might only take 10. What that means is that many, many more people will be playing with biology. They'll try to produce fish that glow in the dark. They will try to produce cancer treatments. They'll try to produce things that are half horse, half elephant. I mean, who knows what they're going to do?
In the future, even a high school kid may be able to get a contraption, simply type the letters of the alphabet, A, T, C, G, in different order, and create a designer virus.
No innovation is risk-free, but I think we do have to be concerned about the innovations where the potential downside could be not limited, but almost global.
The cat is out of the bag, the horse is out of the barn at this point, the toothpaste is out of the tube, whatever way you want to explain it. We're not going to pull back, we're not going to stop the technological innovation.
No, we can't stop innovation even if we wanted to. If Einstein knew what E = mc squared would result in, the atomic blasts, would he have had the inkling of the idea and just stopped even developing it further? I don't think he could have.
Climate change, epidemics, and terrorism are all problems beyond the control of individual governments. There is only a limited amount science and technology can contribute to their solution.
If you don't realize it, let me hold up a mirror. You are freaking out the rest of the world, okay? They don't understand or know what you're doing. It's really important that you understand that you make people uncomfortable. Does that mean you should stop doing what you're doing? Absolutely not. Charge on. Charge rage on. And you can take solace, you can take comfort in the fact that knowing people like Galileo and Charles Darwin and others that had great scientific breakthroughs of their time faced similar forms of discrimination from the institutions of power in their day.
That's the mission. That's, if you would, hopefully the takeaway, that you can, and let no one tell you you cannot. These 9 weeks that you've had, if nothing else, is perhaps a small glimmer of insight of if you're allowed to dream in a community of people who are dreamers and ultimately doers, that there is nothing impossible. We all ready? Yes. You guys excited? Yes. All right, let's go party. These companies, these ideas, were created within this bubble of optimism within Singularity University where anything is possible. And when they go home, the question is this all for naught?
Impact 1 billion people in 10 years. How are we going to do this?
What are we doing, and does this actually matter? Is it really going to amount to anything?
Are we really going to be able to pull this off? Are these companies going to be able to survive?
Will we actually be able to create something great?
Will they survive in the real world?
Since leaving SU, we created the company. We took it out in the field for our first trials of Matternet in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. We went into post-earthquake camps and really saw what it is to fly in a first response type of situation. We really wanted to see technology working at the place where it could be used and see what problems would emerge there. The whole experience really informed our thinking tremendously.
Papua New Guinea has a big tuberculosis epidemic, probably 80% of the population. They don't have access to healthcare. So Doctors Without Borders called us and said, can you help? Because we have this big emergency in the country and the government has called us. that is priceless. Like, yeah, it's life-changing.
So for those that still believe that this is science fiction, I firmly say to you that it is not.
The Prime Minister of Bhutan found us after watching our TED Talk. We worked in Bhutan with the Ministry of Health and World Health Organization. They have a big telemedicine project connecting rural clinics with hospital labs. And the next step after having this telemedicine project is to say, okay, I will send you a medicine. And that bit was, missing. One of these first flights was launched by the Prime Minister himself. We're launching our first product this year, the components that will allow people and companies to set up their own transportation networks. And I'm super excited to see what happens, to see what people and companies are going to do with this product. This is a big deal.
It's very bright. The future of modern is very bright.
So since graduating, we founded BioMine. We put together a business plan, and about a year later, put together a team of world-class experts, went out and identified viable technologies for recovering value from electronic waste. To date, we've raised nearly $50 million. And that financing allowed us to really put together the engineering plans to build our first facility in the United States, which will be the first facility of its kind in North America to recover value from electronic waste.
Former Vice President Al Gore was actually there to help make this announcement today in Mississippi County during a ceremonial groundbreaking.
This started with environmentalists who were looking for a way to deal with a very bad environmental problem.
My personal hope for the company is that we're able to open up a similar facility in places like Guayu, China, the places that need this the most in the world.
Since I left SU, we've made significant steps with bringing 3D printing to space.
We were lucky enough to nail our first contract with NASA to do a bunch of zero-gravity flights. That's where we tested our concepts for 3D printing.
Jason Dunn here, live in zero-G airplane with the Made in Space experiment. It's gonna need you live. The first time we're gonna manufacture weightlessness.
I like it. We flew roughly equivalent to about 2 hours of zero gravity time. Being in zero gravity takes you to a whole nother world.
We got to understand what zero gravity really feels like. It let the team understand the environment they're designing for. By the end of those tests, we basically became the people who understood how 3D printing worked in zero gravity.
High five! Yeah! Face five! Face five!
How'd you do? It was great. After we did all these successful zero gravity flights, we went on to develop a design for a 3D printer with NASA.
This is where the magic really happens. Seriously. This is a milestone not for just made in space, not even just for America, but really for our species and for humanity. It's the milestone that's going to help push us further, and everybody here has been, really helped make that happen. We were down in Cape Canaveral with SpaceX 4, where our printer was strapped to the top of a rocket. being launched to the International Space Station.
Oh! Oh my God!
Dude!
Look at that!
Dude!
Look at that!
Man, when that rocket launched, we were crying.
On the ground! In the air! 3D print! Everywhere!
It was a big moment. I spent 4.5 years, I think, up to that point.
One of the biggest things that was on our mind after we launched the printer was what is going to be the first thing that we print. That's the first thing ever manufactured off of planet Earth.
The first thing we ever made off of planet Earth was a piece of the printer itself.
While this was a very simple part to print, it's also symbolic of where we're headed. This is a printer that is now printing parts of itself, which means it could be printing parts of another printer. So where we're headed is the idea of self-replicating machines. If we can make it even a little bit easier for humans to go to space, then we're not impacting 1 billion people, we're impacting everybody. We're impacting the whole planet.
Do you think you guys are on the way to affecting 1 billion people?
We are on the road to impact 1 billion people.
It's definitely a really big goal. I think it can be feasible.
But I think also it depends on, how you're measuring the success of SU.
I think SU has already proved that it's working.
What you find here are companies that are taking huge risk. They don't see much, sometimes much potential in the near term because everybody here is focused on how do you change the world? How do you do something that across the rest of your life has a giant impact?
I think that if SU can change the conversation and can draw people away from, these sort of short-term goals and into this more long-term thinking, then I think it's succeeded in its mission.
The fact that Singularity University has given this opportunity to people like me that were hungry for changing the world, for doing things differently, for thinking differently, this in itself is a big success, I think.
Did any particular faculty member have a big impact on you?
Danbury.
Dan Barry was definitely one of the most inspiring people I've ever met.
Everybody in my first grade class wanted to be an astronaut. By the time I was in sixth grade, only half. And by the time I got to high school, nobody else wanted to be an astronaut. And in fact, my high school guidance counselor told me, "You'll never be an astronaut. And you need to start dressing for success and get real, because you are definitely never going to be an astronaut." So I never met anybody for years that was going to be an astronaut. And it became embarrassing, and I stopped telling people that's what I wanted to do. Except for my wife, who I told on the very first day we met, and now she believes me about stuff. But anyway, so it really was. It was embarrassing. I wouldn't tell people that I want to be an astronaut because people would think it was this big joke, right? And so I found other things to do, but I started to apply. And in 1978, I applied to NASA to be an astronaut, and they said no. So then in 1979, I applied, and they said no. And so in 1980, they said no. In 1981, they said no. And so I applied in 82, and they said no. And I applied in 83, and they said no. In 84, they said no. In 85, they didn't take applications, so that was a good year. And 86, they said no. And 87, they said no. Well, by 88, I was an assistant professor, and I was already embarrassed to tell people I was applying. And now you have to go to your department chairman and say, I want to apply to be an astronaut, and I need your recommendation, sir. And of course, the response is, what? So in 88, I applied, and they said no. In 89, I went back to my department chair and said, I need you to write another letter, having failed last year. And he said, you ought to be thinking a little more about tenure and a little less about space. And I'm like, I know, but will you still send out the other? Yeah, okay. So in 89, I applied, and they said no. And in 90, I asked him again. He said, you're way too old. I said, oh, crap. So I called NASA. I said, am I too old? And they said, no, you're not too old. Keep applying. We know who you are. So I said, okay. So I applied in 1990, and they said no. And then I went back. I went to the department chair in 91. I said, well, I'm going to do this again. He said, well, at least you got tenure, but I still think it's just stupid, and you're really too old. So anyway, I applied in 91, they said no. So, you ever get the thin envelope, you know, in April? Every April, I got this thin envelope. They don't call you and say no, they just send you this thin, I was like the king of the thin envelopes, right? I was waiting for the FedEx thick package, which never came, right? So, but anyway, so I applied in 92, and I got a phone call, which is way better than an envelope. And I went down there, and I met all these other people who wanted to be astronauts. And I met people who were astronauts. And I hadn't met anybody else who wanted to be an astronaut for 20 years. I couldn't find anybody else. So I wrote home, I said, I found people just like me. And I don't care whether or not they let me be an astronaut. I'm coming here to work. And the neat thing is that tonight, after today, I'm gonna write a really similar email. So it was great to meet you all today. 92.
Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour in pursuit of a Japanese satellite.
You know, people say, were you scared on the pad? I really wasn't. The only concern I had was whether or not this adventure that I had been waiting for 40 years to do wouldn't live up to the billing. You know, suppose I got there and didn't like it. And you never know, right? From the moment the engines turned off and I was in zero-G, those experiences, seeing the Earth from above the sky, flying like Superman, these kind of things not only met these high expectations, but exceeded them. Lots of people told me I wasn't smart enough to be an astronaut. Lots of people told me I wasn't athletic enough to be an astronaut. But you just push past that.
I'm very proud. We've only had a few hundred students come in the short history of this new university. And dozens of companies have been built. A handful of them have been extraordinarily successful. You know, over the next decade, we're going to see thousands of students and hundreds of companies impact this planet and help guarantee, enable, ensure, inspire our future.
SU for life?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It is a cult. It is absolutely a cult.
Okay, we can't put that in the film.
I think you should.
I got a